We're not interested, Marcus. Maybe try something simpler, like managing a smoothie bar. Laughter erupted around the glass conference table, and I just stood there, pitch deck still open, hands clenched. The sharp scent of their cologne mixed with the sterile chill of the boardroom. I had just spent 6 months refining that pitch. 6 months of missed birthdays, sleeping in my car, surviving off vending machine coffee. And now, they didn't even glance twice at the prototype I built from scratch. The CEO, Darren, leaned back in his leather chair like he was doing me a favor by even letting me in. His voice dripped with amusement. Thanks for coming in, though. You've got spirit. I smiled. A calm, quiet kind. And then I picked up my binder, looked around the room, and walked out without a word. But inside, I was already planning my next move. My name is Marcus Taylor. I'm 31, born and raised in Charlotte, North Carolina. My mom worked double shifts as a nurse, and my dad, well, he left when I was 9, so really my mom was both. She always said I was born with gears turning in my head. By the time I was 10, I was disassembling old radios and rebuilding them into makeshift intercoms across our tiny apartment. She called me her little inventor. We didn't have much. Most days we barely scraped by. I remember this one Christmas. Mom bought me a second-hand laptop, probably skipped meals to afford it. It didn't even boot properly. But I fixed it. I stayed up until 3 a.m. watching YouTube tutorials, swapping out wires, rebooting BIOS. That moment, that tiny hum of a fan spinning back to life, that's when I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to build. Not just gadgets. Systems. Solutions. Futures. Fast forward to college. I got into NC State with a partial scholarship. Majored in computer engineering. Worked part-time at a bookstore and delivered food just to cover textbooks. Every dollar counted. Every hour mattered. I built my GPA, built my connections. But most importantly, I built ideas. Ideas that could actually solve problems. After graduation, I got a decent job at a tech consulting firm. It paid well, had benefits. But it wasn't me. I wasn't born to follow. I wanted to lead. I wanted to innovate. So I quit after 2 years and started working on a concept that had haunted me since college. A small business analytics tool powered by real-time AI that could help struggling entrepreneurs make smarter decisions. I called it PulseCheck. Not the flashiest name, but it got the point across. I envisioned something accessible. Something affordable. Something made for people like my mom who couldn't afford fancy consultants, but still ran their lives like CEOs. I poured everything into it. My savings. My apartment lease. Even pawned my old game consoles to afford server space. I moved into a shared living space with 4 other people in their 20s chasing different kinds of dreams. My room was small, barely fit a mattress. But I had a desk, a coffee maker, and a whiteboard, and that was enough. For 2 years, I lived like that. I pitched PulseCheck to investors who smiled politely and told me the market was too saturated. I presented at local expos, tech fairs, even one in Atlanta where my laptop overheated mid-demo and shut down. I still finished the pitch. That crowd clapped out of sympathy, but I didn't care. Every no just sharpened my resolve. But then came the opportunity. Hawkbridge Capital. A venture firm known for incubating small startups into billion-dollar giants. They had funded 3 unicorns in the last 5 years. And their site had an open call for pitches. I submitted my deck, demo video, projections, and forgot about it for a month. Then I got the email. They wanted to hear more. I could barely breathe reading those words. I spent the next 4 weeks refining everything. I updated the UI, ran new market research, and even brought on a friend, Melanie, to role-play hardball investor questions with me. She grilled me for hours every day like it was her full-time job. Melanie. She was my rock in that time. We weren't dating, but she believed in me like no one else ever had. She told me once over dollar tacos, "Marcus, I've met smart people. But you're dangerous smart. Just wait. They're going to wish they'd listened." She even loaned me a pair of shoes when mine had a tear in the sole. "You're walking into that room like you already own it," she said. And that's how I ended up in that conference room at Hawkbridge. Suits everywhere. Glossy surfaces. A coffee station that probably cost more than my rent. I gave it everything I had. Spoke from the gut. Backed it up with data. Walked them through PulseCheck's beta success with a few local businesses, how one bakery increased their margins by 23% in just 2 months. But they didn't care. Darren, the CEO, skimmed through 2 slides, whispered something to his VP, then leaned back and dropped that smoothie bar comment. They laughed. And something inside me changed. Not because they said no. Because they didn't even look. They dismissed everything I was without even trying to understand it. People like Darren didn't want solutions, they wanted names. Connections. Privilege. Ivy League polish. I walked out that day with my binder in my hand, and Melanie waiting outside in her beat-up Corolla. She looked at my face, and didn't have to ask. Just started driving. We didn't speak until we were halfway across town. Then she said quietly, "That door closed. So what's next?" And I answered, "We burn the building down." Not literally, but figuratively? Absolutely. After that humiliation at Hawkbridge, I disappeared. Not off the grid, but off their radar. Melanie and I made a pact. No more chasing investors who didn't see us. Instead, we'd build PulseCheck our way, small, lean, underground. I picked up 2 part-time jobs, tech support during the day, janitor at a co-working space at night. That place turned out to be a gift. While I swept floors, I listened. I eavesdropped on founders talking about funding, networking, scaling. And I took notes. Melanie, on the other hand, worked her magic with branding and copy. She turned our clunky dashboard into a sleek, intuitive interface that actually felt human. We didn't have the budget for ad campaigns, so we posted in Reddit forums, niche LinkedIn groups, and joined small business webinars pretending to be attendees, only to drop links in the chat. Guerrilla marketing, scrappy, relentless. And slowly it worked. Our beta users grew. Not thousands, but hundreds. Then thousands. We made PulseCheck free for the first 30 days, with plans starting at $19.99 per month after that. Cheap? Yes. But scalable. And more importantly, effective. We weren't just getting users. We were getting results. Restaurants, clothing boutiques, online shops, they all saw better decision-making, tighter margins, and smarter product rotations. By the end of year 2, PulseCheck was generating $78,000 per month in recurring revenue. That's when I got a call from a man named Henry Caldwell. He was the COO of ByteNest, Hawkbridge Capital's biggest competitor in the VC world. They had heard about PulseCheck through some of their portfolio businesses. Henry didn't waste time, just said, "I want to talk. In person. Coffee's on me." 2 weeks later, I was sitting in a downtown DC rooftop cafe overlooking the Potomac. Henry wore no tie, no pretense, just smart eyes and a genuine smile. "Marcus," he said, "you built something brilliant. And you did it without us. That takes guts." I didn't smile. "Why now?" He shrugged. "Because I like betting on people who've been underestimated. Hawkbridge missed the train. We're trying to catch it. I'll admit, I wanted to say no just out of pride. But Henry didn't want to own us. He wanted to partner. And he had something else to offer. Access. ByteNest didn't just invest in startups. They acquired underperforming companies with potential and flipped them around. One of those companies was a sluggish business software firm named DataNest, with tools designed for large enterprises, but with no real presence in the small business space. They'd been losing ground for years. Outdated UI, rigid pricing, lack of innovation. Henry offered me something unheard of. Come in. Let a new division under ByteNest using their infrastructure. Merge PulseCheck into it. Build your vision, your way. And in exchange, we'll give you a budget, a team, and access to their business client base. It was wild. It felt like cheating. But it wasn't. It was leverage. And I took it. Over the next 6 months, PulseCheck transformed into PulseCheck Pro, with tools now tailored to mid-sized businesses, integrations with payment systems, inventory tracking, predictive modeling, and customer feedback loops. And ByteNest? They gave me room to run. Revenue exploded. Our subscriber base doubled, then tripled. We poached two of Hawkbridge's clients without even trying. And that's when fate served me something delicious. Melanie forwarded me an internal memo she got from someone in her marketing circles. Hawkbridge was in talks to acquire DataNest, not knowing it had been quietly restructured and rebranded under ByteNest's umbrella. They thought they were swooping in to save a dying company. They didn't realize they were trying to buy the house I had already rebuilt from the foundation up. I kept quiet, waited, and then the day came. Hawkbridge sent an invitation to ByteNest leadership and department heads to attend a due diligence roundtable and exploratory session. Henry grinned as he slid the invite across the table. Your name's on the list. You in. I walked into that Hawkbridge boardroom wearing the same exact color blazer I wore the day they laughed at me. Only this time, I wasn't holding a binder. I was holding the entire room's attention. Darren was already seated. When I stepped in, his face twitched. Just a flicker. He tried to recover, but I could tell he remembered. I took a seat directly across from him. The meeting began. They started with pleasantries, charts, potential synergies. And then Darren looked at me and said, I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name. You're with? I leaned back, calm, composed. Marcus Taylor, VP of Product Strategy for PulseCheck Pro, the division you're currently evaluating. Silence. Darren blinked. PulseCheck. I nodded.
Yeah.
It used to be a small analytics tool. You probably wouldn't recognize it. He swallowed. I let it hang for a moment, then added. Actually, I believe we met before. 2 years ago. You told me I should run a smoothie bar. The room went still. I opened my folder. Not with desperation. With certainty. Before we proceed, you might want to look over this. It was a summary sheet, growth metrics, user testimonials, revenue charts, and client poach data, including one from their own portfolio. Darren's eyes scanned it quickly. Then again. Slower this time. He looked up. You built this. I did. With the help of people who believed in me. People who looked past the polish and saw the potential. He cleared his throat. I see. I smiled. Good. Darren tried to recover fast. The moment he realized who I was, what I had become, his whole demeanor shifted. The smug lean vanished. The playful arrogance in his voice.
Gone.
Now he sat upright, straightening his jacket like it would cover the panic underneath. Marcus, he began, forcing a half smile. It's good to see you again. I remember now. You were passionate. Passionate? That word. He used it like a dismissal again.
I didn't let it rattle me this time.
Let's stay focused, I replied smoothly. You're here to assess an acquisition. That's what we're here for too. Henry watched in silence, sipping his espresso, fighting a smirk. Melanie, who had been brought on as Director of User Experience, sat beside me, her calm presence grounding me. The meeting carried on for a bit. Numbers were shared. Questions about migration plans and shared market bases. But the tension kept crawling back to me.
To him.
To the unspoken history that neither of us wanted to say out loud in front of the others. After the formal agenda, there was a break. That's when Darren cornered me by the coffee bar. Look, he said, lowering his voice. I know how it might have looked back then. But I hope you understand, at this level, we get a lot of pitches. A lot of noise. I sipped my coffee, keeping my expression neutral. You were laughing while you called me noise. He shifted, clearly uncomfortable. I didn't mean it like that. No, I said, you meant it exactly like that. And that's okay. That moment taught me something. What's that? I turned to face him fully. That people like you only see potential when it walks in wearing a familiar suit. You don't see innovation. You see connections. Legacy. Your own reflection. But I don't need you to see me anymore. He hesitated. I think we both could benefit if we set aside the past and work together. That's when I saw it. Desperation cloaked in diplomacy. You want PulseCheck because it's outperforming your internal tools. Because your own clients are leaving you for us. Don't pretend this is goodwill. He looked around. Let's not make this personal. But it is personal, I said, more quietly. You made it personal the moment you laughed. And I made it personal the moment I turned your dismissal into my fuel. He wasn't the only one trying to salvage position. Eliza, their marketing director, who'd also been in that first room years ago, emailed me after the meeting. Marcus, I just wanted to say, your progress is inspiring. If there's ever an opportunity to collaborate, I'd love to bring some of my experience to your team. Experience? This was the same woman who once interrupted me mid-pitch to ask if I had a real business model or just dreams. I forwarded the email to Melanie without comment. She wrote back one word. Nope. Still, not everyone at Hawkbridge was tone-deaf. Liam, a junior associate at the time of my pitch, now one of their more progressive senior VCs, reached out in a way that surprised me.
He called. Directly.
Marcus, he said, I owe you an apology. I remember you. I remember your presentation. I should have spoken up. I was scared to lose my footing back then. I paused, then said, thank you for saying that. I've been following PulseCheck ever since it started trending in SMB circles. It's brilliant. What you've done. That's leadership. If you're ever hiring, I cut him off gently. We are. And I'm willing to talk. He wasn't groveling. He was just honest. So I kept the door open. Because that's what growth looks like. But not everyone wanted peace. That week, a blog post from an anonymous source appeared online criticizing PulseCheck Pro's privacy protocols. It accused our platform of collecting and storing sensitive user data. The article wasn't just wrong, it was deliberately misleading. And the IP address? Traced back to an intern at Hawkbridge. I didn't go public. I didn't sue. Instead, I had ByteNest's legal team send a quiet letter to Hawkbridge. They responded in 24 hours with a retraction, apology, and a promise that internal measures were being taken. I never mentioned it in meetings. I didn't need to. Their silence the next time I walked into that building was apology enough. But the confrontation wasn't over. At the final merger discussion, when it became clear Hawkbridge wouldn't get full acquisition rights, only a minority stake, Darren snapped. This was a mistake, he said, tossing his pen down. We don't need this deal. We could build our own product and take your market share back. Melanie raised an eyebrow. You've had 5 years to do that. And all you built was ego.
Oof.
The room went quiet. Henry stood. Well, gentlemen, if that's your position, we're happy to walk. But know this. PulseCheck is already in talks with Shopify, Square, and Stripe for integrations. We won't be waiting for you. Darren's VP looked pale. I didn't say another word. I just gathered my notes, nodded politely, and walked out. Outside, in the parking lot, Melanie caught up to me. I think that was the loudest mic drop I've ever witnessed, she said, grinning. I chuckled. You think that was the mic drop? She blinked. It wasn't. No, I said, unlocking the car. The real mic drop comes in the next 6 months. When they watch PulseCheck launch version 3.0 with AI-driven cash flow predictions. And we release it for free to startups under 5 employees. Her jaw dropped. You're serious? I nodded. They tried to erase me. I'm gonna make sure people like me never get erased again. After the final failed meeting with Hawkbridge, I felt a strange emptiness. You'd think I'd feel triumphant, right? Like I'd finally slain the dragon. But instead, I felt calm. It was over. Not just the deal, but the chase. The need for validation. The hunger to prove something to people who never really mattered. I walked into my new office at ByteNest the next morning, bigger, brighter, with a view of the city, and sat in silence for 15 minutes. Just breathing. Just existing. The desk in front of me gleamed, untouched. My name was etched in brushed aluminum on the wall. Marcus Taylor. Vice President, PulseCheck Pro. It still didn't feel real.
But it was.
Melanie walked in holding 2 coffees and handed me one. You did it, she said simply. I nodded. We did. That afternoon, I had a one-on-one with Jules Ramirez, our newest hire. A Latina developer from Brooklyn, fresh out of a coding boot camp, nervous but brilliant. She looked up at me during our onboarding session and said, Sir, Marcus, why'd you hire me? I don't even have a degree. I smiled. Neither did the guy who built the first version of this app. She blinked. Wait, you mean you? Yep. She sat back, stunned. Listen, I said, you don't need a pedigree to build something that matters. You need vision, fire, and someone who'll open the door. She grinned, eyes shining. That was the beginning of something bigger than a product. It was the start of a new culture. We built PulseCheck Pro into not just a tool, but a movement. We created a Founders First program, offering free mentorship and analytics tools to Black and Brown entrepreneurs in underserved communities. No strings attached. We hosted our first virtual summit, where I gave the keynote. I told my story, not the cleaned-up version, the real one. I mentioned Hawkbridge. I named Darren. Not out of vengeance, out of transparency. You will be dismissed, I said. They'll look past you, laugh at you, but don't let them define you. Let them wake up one day and see your name on the building across the street. People applauded. Some cried. Even I had to blink a few times. One woman, maybe late 40s, emailed me afterward. A small business owner from Houston who'd nearly given up. Your story made me open my shop again. Thank you for reminding me that I'm not invisible. That email meant more than any profit report. Meanwhile, Hawkbridge started spiraling. One of their top clients jumped ship to our platform, publicly praising our analytics as a game changer for real people. Their stock dipped 8% in a month. Still, I didn't dance on their grave. That's not who I wanted to be. But karma? She danced for me. A few weeks later, Darren called me directly. Marcus, he said, voice tighter than ever. I wanted to reach out man to man. I let the silence stretch. I misjudged you.
Badly.
I'd like to make things right. I let out a quiet breath. Darren, I appreciate the sentiment, but I'm not interested in rewriting history. There was a long pause. Then, understood.
Click.
I wasn't angry. I wasn't smug. I just didn't need him anymore. Instead, I focused forward. I gave Melanie a raise and named her Chief Strategy Officer. I created a rotating internship program targeting first-gen college students and high schoolers interested in tech. And then, one quiet Sunday afternoon, I drove back to Charlotte, to my mom's house. She still lived in the same apartment. Same beige walls, same creaky elevator. I walked in and she hugged me like she always had, like I was still her little boy with a screwdriver and a dream. We sat down for dinner, her famous garlic chicken and sweet tea. Halfway through, I reached into my bag and slid a brown envelope across the table. She opened it slowly, her brows furrowed. Inside, a deed. To a house. Her house. A 3-bedroom brick home in a quiet suburb, already paid for. She looked up at me, trembling. Marcus, what is this? It's yours, Mama. For every overnight shift. Every dollar you gave me when you had none to spare. Every night you stayed up worrying about me. You carried me for years. Now it's my turn. She covered her mouth, tears slipping down her cheeks. You didn't have to do this, she whispered. I wanted to. We didn't say much after that. Just ate in silence, the kind that feels holy. Later that night, before I left, I stood in my childhood bedroom. The same peeling posters on the wall. The busted laptop on the shelf. I reached out and touched it. That broken old machine started everything. And now here I was, giving homes, building futures, changing lives. Not in spite of being ignored, but because of it. I stood outside that same office building where they once laughed me out the door. This time, there was no briefcase, no pitch deck, no anxious sweat clinging to my back. Just confidence and a signed acquisition agreement tucked in the inner pocket of my tailored coat. I stepped inside the lobby of Darren and Cole Innovations, now just Cole Innovations, since Darren had been forced out during a recent board reshuffle. Rumor had it that poor quarterly projections and a loss of market edge were to blame. No one had figured out that I was the cause of both. A receptionist greeted me, wide-eyed. Mr. Green, right this way. They're expecting you. I walked into the boardroom, yes, that boardroom. The air still smelled the same, but everything else had changed. The room that once felt like a shark tank now felt like a fishbowl. Cole stood up, extending a hesitant hand. Marcus. Welcome. Congratulations on acquiring ByteGrid. I shook his hand. Thanks. They've got vision and they believed in mine when you didn't. He forced a smile. Business is business, right? No hard feelings, I replied smoothly, then sat at the head of the table. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. I wasn't just the man they rejected. I was the man who turned their worst nightmare into reality. But I didn't come here for revenge. I came to remind myself that belief in your own vision matters more than any boardroom full of doubters. That your purpose is never defined by someone else's permission. As the meeting started, I glanced around. Not one of them could meet my eyes. I didn't need their approval anymore. I own the table now.